Hey guys, welcome. I don't even know if I wanted to call this a VGHD podcasting because I was like, hey, let me set up my old streaming layout for my podcasting days on here, or 'cause I was just gonna do another ASK3BIT thing, but I was like, hey, let me just reset up everything, and we'll make make it, I guess, my podcast. But welcome to the VGHD podcast, I guess. I don't know. So, how you doing, Matt?
Not bad. So if this is like a return of VGHD podcast, is this like episode 1 or is
I guess it could be like a remaster.
remaster?
Yeah. There's
All right.
a remaster.
What's up, man? How are you?
Pretty good. I want to usually with my shows that like Ask 3 Bits, usually like I have more of a casual talk of basically what's going on. And, I'm trying to bring that back and stream a little bit more. But and I was like, hey, I invited you on. I was like, hey, we can just chat it up with different topics and everything. So if anybody in chat who's watching, you guys just let us know what the sound and everything is. Because I literally just set this up not that long ago, so there could be some things. Yeah, but
we were supposed to be live over an hour ago, and then you pushed it back 30 minutes.
yeah,
And I was like, okay, no problem. And then you're like, oh no, I don't have a stream set up for this. Let's push it back another 30 minutes. Okay.
yeah, you know, it is what it is. I'll say the next time it'll be done. So then we could just hop on and just be like, boop. Yeah, but I did want to kind of chat about some of the FTC stuff going on.
Enemies over there.
I didn't catch as much today, so it's like you might have some insight on today's show, but I caught the other days. I was basically posting about it on Twitter. Basically, day 2 and day 3 of the FTC case. So who went up on the stand today? Was it just Satya?
No, it's Bobby Kotick. There. And apparently he hates Game Pass, and he thinks all publishers hate Game Pass. Or is that what Jim Bryan said that all publishers? I can't think. One of them said that all publishers. But anyway, Bobby Kotick let it be multi-game subscription service. And then he was asked by the FTC lawyer, well then why did, or the judge actually, well what, you agreed, to sell to Microsoft knowing that they are planning on putting your games in multi-game subscription service called Game Pass. And he's like, yeah, well, I have obligations to shareholders. We can agree to disagree on that. So,
yeah.
It's just like it's a business move. The thing is, like, FTC questions being more and more irrelevant, and I don't understand why they're picking the questions they're asking. Even on the redirects with some of the Microsoft witnesses and stuff like that, it's just like they keep going for gotcha moments and they keep failing time and time again. And the gotcha moments don't even necessarily pertain to anything that would help their case. So it's like they're just trying to make the witnesses look bad, I think. And because they don't really have a case to stand on. So it's been interesting. Also, Satya had a short sit down today. Then they had another economist, the economist that Microsoft had on yesterday came back to finish her testimony.
Yeah,
And
she's great.
then
She's great.
there was another expert from Microsoft that had filed or had some kind of report with it, and then he was cross-examined the FTC and then redirected Microsoft as well, which that was where it ended off at. So it was interesting. I didn't catch all of it. I just was off and on when I could. But man, this FTC trial against Microsoft, entertaining to say the least.
Yeah, yeah. And the I forgot her name. The basically the person that was going against Lee's statements. What was her name?
I can't remember
Um,
off the top of my head.
she was great.
Doing pretty good. Yeah, and then
Yeah,
the other expert that that the FTC actually called of Microsoft expert. Um, he also was dismissing pretty much Dr.
yeah.
Lee's.
And like
Statement.
each day, I guess they are ramping up like their intensity a little bit these past few days. It feels like anyways, like the FTC, just the way they're kind of hinging on those questions. I know that I think it was like the second day, there was an FTC lawyer who was kind of going all in, kind of being rude to some of the people, but they're kind of I don't know they're kind of turning up the temperature a little bit. I was hearing a little bit of that last section of the I guess it was I don't even know who the witness was, but that the very last one before they essentially ended it. Um, they were kind of going all
Yesterday it
in.
was as the economist. But the day before that, I can't remember. It was,
Yeah, I can't remember,
but
but overall, I think this case, I mean, like you said pretty much perfectly, like the FTC is kind of looking for gotcha moments at this point because a lot of their main arguments of why they shut down the case is, I mean, it's kind of been proven false in a lot of ways. Um,
they're asking a bunch of irrelevant, unnecessary questions that don't really have any kind of merit.
yeah,
This
like you said,
consumer first perspective of which FTC should be standing on. Instead, they're talking about details over cloud and how is it, uh, what defines the cloud market and stuff like that.
right,
Trying to establish it as a market, while Microsoft is not trying to say it should be. It's just another form of distribution, right? And an
right,
option, but it's um, really small potatoes. The bigger thing.
right,
They're trying to make a big deal about the small aspects of it because that's the only argument that they could possibly have. It looks like, and I don't think it's a good argument at all. They keep falling on their face, fake attempts at trying to drive conversation, and to the point where they keep making mistakes, which is the hilarious thing. Like even the judge today shot him down again um, when they kept trying for gotcha moments, and
yeah,
the judge was like, "Okay, enough of that." It's happened multiple times now, which we haven't really seen back against the Microsoft lawyers.
Yeah, what was some of those gotcha moments? I do remember the um, one where the FTC pretty much got wrong. He was confused that that COD or that games could play on the PS4 and PS5. I think he was basically referring to the Minecraft situation.
Yeah, they were surprised. He was surprised that you could play the PS4 version on a PS5. He didn't know that.
Yeah,
His mind was blown. Technology, right?
yeah.
Um,
Because I think he was basically trying to insinuate that they didn't make a version for the PS5 because of the acquisition of Mojang. So he was basically saying like, hey, you guys, when you purchased Mojang, you didn't attempt to make a PS5 version, but he was...
yeah, but then they shot themselves even on the foot even more because they admitted that they wouldn't give Xbox dev kits if they acquired ABK, or they threatened to. And then Microsoft said they couldn't do the Minecraft version for PS5 because they never got a dev kit in time for that. So, another shoot yourself in the foot moment. And then the other one was when they tried to insinuate that all Microsoft first-party games are exclusive.
Yeah.
And they asked the question, straight up yes or no question. And they were like, all Xbox first party developed games are exclusive to Xbox, right? And then Sarah Bond was like, no, that's not right, which is like completely hurts their case at all. Like, it's just baffling that they would even ask some of these questions. Like, it's unpreparedness.
Straight up yes
I
or
said on
no
the podcast the
question.
other day, it's worrisome that the lawyers are so inept from the FTC. You know,
Yeah.
in this case, it's probably good that they're inept. You know, but they if they actually had something that they needed to fight against, I would be worried.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, we've been saying this for months, right? That they don't have much of a case because of what other people in the industry are doing. I mean, Sony has exclusives, so if you're bringing up exclusives, and then that's your main part of your argument, then you would have to also bring up the fact that Sony does it worse. I think was it? I forgot who said it, but essentially the judge asked one of the people on the stand about exclusives, and they're like, yeah, Sony has like 3 times more exclusives than Microsoft.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this case has always been, in my opinion, good for competition. This, and as we are going throughout the days, it's just proving that. And I mean, it is what it is. It's always been very political to me, like this entire case of why it was blocked. I mean, it was clear when who was it? I believe it wasn't Matt Booty. It was so one of the Microsoft people went to the FTC to basically negotiate the deal. The deal was blocked pretty much as soon as he walked in that meeting. It was like a 20-minute meeting. They're like, no, we're blocking the deal, and they didn't even attempt to have a conversation.
When the whole line of questioning is to try and discredit the witness instead of actually provide more merit to your case by asking hard questions, then it becomes clear. That's I mean, obviously completely 2 different types of cases. But I remember when I was watching the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial, right?
Yeah.
And like this, the clear difference between the 2 teams, right? Where Johnny Depp's lawyer team was there, and they were actually like getting information and direct answers and stuff from the witnesses and stuff, right? Whereas Amber Heard's whole point of their lawyer team was to try and get gotcha moments and like keep trying to discredit things, and like and then they made so many mistakes in that as well. And it's just kind of like you can kind of see when these lawyers don't have a winning case, right? They have they're grasping at straws. They have to go for these moments because that's all they have, and it looks really obvious to me when you're listening to this, because the judge is sitting there and the judge will chime in. The judge is actually asking way better questions than the lawyers are.
That's something
like
I noticed too.
She'll interrupt the lawyers who's supposed to be like examining the witness, and the judge will like interrupt it and actually ask a legitimate question, in which the witness there will answer, and it's like, okay, that was good information here, right? As opposed to this thing where this is what I keep seeing in this case 3-bit is like, okay, do you see section 701.82 and then the witness is like, okay, let me find it. Yeah, I see it. Can you read that, but don't read it out loud because it's protected, it's sealed, don't read it. And then the witness is like, okay, I'm reading it to myself. Okay, I got it. And then they're like, did you read that? Yes, I did. Okay, next question. Like, what? How is that helping anybody? Or they'll be like, they're like, did you use that as in your assessment, right, of this acquisition or whatever? And then the witness is like, no, because it's not relevant. And then they're like, okay, but you did it, right? you didn't use it. And they're like, no, I didn't use it because of this reason, this reason. And
Oh yeah,
then
they were talking about the
they'll,
cloud market, right? I caught that.
yeah,
That was today when they're.
and they'll keep doing that, and they'll be like, but I just want to be clear that you didn't use that. And then like the one moment today was them asking the witness if he had seen the contract of proposed to PlayStation, right?
Okay.
And they were like, you didn't use that in your analysis, actually seeing the contract. You just used an article talking about the contract. And he was like, I did read the contract, so I had knowledge of what was in the contract. There, but in the footnote here, it just says you referenced the article. Well, he said for the purpose of this, it was more regarding Jim Ryan's comments about the contract, and it didn't really matter, whether what was in the contract or not. It was about the acknowledgement of a contract offer, and what Jim Ryan said about it. And they kept saying, but you didn't use this in your analysis, right? And they were like, well, I mean, I did, and then the judge was like, all right, fair enough. It just wasn't in the footnote. Move on,
Yeah.
like trying to basically say that this witness's testimony should not be acknowledged at all because they didn't have knowledge or didn't reference specifics of the contract and their assessment. And his take was that that's not 100% what he was there to do, but he did see it and it did weigh into his thought process. It just little tidbits like that, or just happen over and over again. And you can see that you can kind of hear the judge get frustrated at times with the FTC lawyers. Not to an extreme. I think the judge is doing a really good job, but it kind of becomes clear occasionally how she has to interrupt and stop their line of questioning because they keep harping on the same question that there is no answer.
Yeah, because essentially what he kept having to say, they were mentioning like cloud in different markets, and he had to pinpoint that I think it's fairly obvious that the cloud market is a less than 1%. I mean, that's been said in different ways throughout the case. Like, essentially saying the cloud isn't really a separate market. It's like an addition. Like, they use it as a way to like install games. Sarabon was essentially saying, like, some people just say like use it to try out a game, see if they like it. If they like it, they install it. People are using it in more sort of like smaller ways. So it's an addition. It was kind of what he was saying on the stand, is the cloud is an addition, because otherwise it wouldn't be on these platforms. So you didn't really have to look into other reasons why it would be beneficial, because right now it's not available on those platforms. So when he was saying like the lawyer was basically trying to get him in a gotcha moment there by saying, did you look at, because it's not in the Ukraine, did you look at did you know that this cloud deal is in the Ukraine for, what was it, Boosteroid? It was like a couple of them, like,
yeah, and the point of that is they're trying to say that it's going to be a bad service because of the location and the distance of those markets. But like, they didn't mention NVIDIA when they were asking those questions, right? They just asked about Boosteroid, Ubitus, Inware, and these other ones are located all over the world and stuff. Been like, NVIDIA was one of those that they, in that line of questioning, they purposefully left out, right? And besides that, it's really kind of irrelevant because it's a global deal, and those individual markets in those other areas are going to benefit from that, whereas NVIDIA customers also will benefit from it in the US, right? So, and I think it's possible for companies to host servers in other countries as well. I don't know the logistics of how those companies operate, but if you were to try and serve other parts of the globe as a cloud provider, my guess would be you would try and have a cloud a server hub in that region. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so like wherever the company's headquarters are located is kind of like irrelevant even to that question. Like Microsoft's in the US, but they service Game Pass all around the all around the world, right? In the cloud. Like, so is it not justifying the cloud from Game Pass and xCloud and these other markets and these other regions because Microsoft is a US company? Or Sony is a Japanese company and they have cloud services in the US as well. Like, it's completely ludicrous thought process that they were trying to go down, and that's the kind of thing using.
Yeah, it's been, to me. I know people. People like to stop speculating on this case, basically saying like, "Oh, why are you guys looking at an FTC case, or um, why are you looking at acquisitions?" It's always been a interesting argument, at least for me, because I love gaming news, whatever it is. I like learning more about the industry, no matter what it is. And I know you're very much in that same regard, but that sort of,
Speculation Town, baby. Let's go.
yes, I mean, you based your channel name, it's called Fun Speculation. And to me, that pretty much clears it. Like, we like to speculate on what's going on in the industry, not trying to basically put a barrier on certain topics. Like, to me, the FTC case is a moment in gaming history.
Oh yeah. There's
Um,
no gatekeeping here. It's like
yeah,
whatever's fun to talk about, and like this is a moment in history. Like, this is never seen a case like this before in gaming where this much stuff is like revealed, and even these documents that keep getting put out that like even with the redacted lines are like they screwed up and used a marker that came through with the Xerox
you
machine,
start
and it's
to
like
read it.
you can actually see through it and stuff, like the amazing information that you never get to see behind closed doors. And like, as somebody that likes to follow the industry, like you as well, who actually works in the industry, it's crazy to see these emails and these conversations. Like, even the email that came out today between Jim and Phil was like so insane, and it shows everything that Microsoft was saying was true with what they offered, and like Jim's being kind of ridiculous with what he's asking for and wanting and stuff. And there's so many aspects to this, like, that we never get to see, right? And there's a lot of gatekeeping with people who feel like, oh, you're only allowed to talk about what I listen to, or only allowed to talk about what I'm interested in, or like what I think is cool, or the right thing. But like, man, like, we've been speculating on this kind of shit for a long time, like with acquisitions, and then seeing the leaked list also that came out about the targets that Microsoft had.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like crazy, bro. It's like, wow, we should have had more episodes just talking about acquisition speculation. And at the time, we were told, hey, why are you speculating on this stuff? People need to stop. You're setting
Yeah.
crazy expectations, or like, like, why keep talking about something? Nothing's gonna happen. And then they go out and buy ABK, and then now you find out that they were targeting Square Enix, they were targeting Sega. They have a bunch of other independent studios on their list that they would like to acquire, or that they thought would be a good possibility. So, man, it's fun, right? Like,
Yeah, it's always been a really good time to me, because like you said, we're getting an insight into the industry like we've never had before. I'm fortunate enough to see some creative side to the industry, but in terms of like deals, like these acquisitions, we've never really gotten as much info as we are getting now. I think the last time we've gotten a lot of information about like like the government basically kind of trying to chime in the gaming industry. I believe the last time was like Mortal Kombat, the first ESRB rating, essentially where they had to step in and start regulating um, video games to have certain ratings. You have like a friendly game, like a Sonic or something, and then you have Mortal Kombat where you rip out someone's skull. So the government had to kind of step in, like, hey, there should be some like E rating and M rating, just so parents know when they're buying a game. That was like the last time I can think of where the government really stepped in and we got a little bit more insight to the industry. Other than that, we've had snippets basically into the industry only because all of us podcasters have just done our research. Like we look at interviews, we look at statements that Phil or someone makes, and then we kind of research from there. But not like a court case where they're kind of forced to tell us some things like, hey, we actually wanted to buy Sega, we wanted to buy Square Enix. We never really got this much insight into how the industry works with the big three.
They have to tell the truth too, right?
Yeah,
so that's like interesting. And that's the most interesting thing too about this, because they still keep making it about two things: Call of Duty and the small cloud market, right? And with Call of Duty, which they spend most of their time talking about, it's become more, and that's what they base their whole economist type argument for as well. It is easily just written off by the fact that Phil Spencer on the stand said that they are going to put Call of Duty on PlayStation still. Like that, between the contract that was offered, which was proven to have been offered again in court, as well, and which was also talked about by the other expert today about Microsoft having offered that to Tim Ryan and stuff as well. There's so much there that it's like, well, if that's the concern, Microsoft's already more than validated their intention for putting Call of Duty multi-platform, regardless of the arguments that they try and make. Because once you sit up on the stand and say you're going to, and then show the evidence that you've already offered it as well, they declined it, then that's all you really need to know. You know what I mean? So really anything that they say after and beyond that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Like everything is trumped by the fact that Phil Spencer said what he said, and that the contract offer was made.
You'd think this case would be done by now, because if the main concern is Call of Duty, and Phil says like, "Yep, I'm pledging, hand on my heart, Call of Duty's going to PlayStation and other platforms," then you would think, okay, case closed. All right, let's wrap up. But I always thought it's weird in general to have a government body like dictate where a game should go. I always thought that was just kind of weird, but I do get that Call of Duty is it's a massive game. It's one of the top 10 sold games and almost every month when you get the basically GPD. But if Call of Duty is the argument, it's actually really, I've always said it's really smart that Call of Duty is the main argument, because Activision Blizzard owns so many other games. But if Call of Duty is the main argument, then you would think this case is closed. But I guess FTC has to put in some other things in there. I mean, the CMA blocking this deal because of the cloud market was hilarious to me.
Yeah, and that's, I think it's not going to hold up either.
Do you know how that's going to work? Essentially, I've heard like different responses. So if this deal goes through, like essentially FTC, and I think the FTC is essentially has already lost. But let's say they Microsoft wins this FTC case. The CMA's deadlines are a little bit further out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think they go beyond the renegotiation timetable, which Bobby Kotick let it be known today that they're not going to, if the FTC does deliver, it is able to postpone the deal by having a preliminary injunction, then this deal's gone. The board's gonna move on, right? So I think everything hinges on this. As far as Cat and the CMA, I think that with where it's at in the appeals process, like I think with the FTC decision, depending on what happens with the judge there, may put pressure on the CMA and cause them to really accept some kind of a deal. But we'll see. If not, then I think Microsoft may be prepared to close with the CMA and figure out another solution there. It's hard to say what they're going to do, but I don't think they're going to let one market dictate the entirety of this deal, especially one as small as not that it's like as a small, super small market, but like compared to the rest of the world as a whole, compared to just the UK, that $70 billion deal. The $70 billion deal is a big deal. It's like it'd be hard pressed for them to let anything block it at that point.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, man. It's going to be interesting. Like I said it from the start, this deal gets done if Microsoft really, really wants to. If depending on what happens to the FTC, though, it might be too much. So that's only concern I have with the FTC is that when it comes down to these things, right? It's basically people that don't know much about the industry making the decision, right? And the judge is trying to learn it, and I think she's doing as good a job as she can. And the FTC clearly has failed to understand it whatsoever. But she's having to hear the FTC, which is so confusing because they're so ignorant to what the industry is. And then she hears Microsoft testimony, and sometimes it's hard when you aren't as knowledgeable about something to know what's what when you have so much random stuff being presented to you. Yeah. So like if you have a bunch of idiots that don't know what they're talking about and you have some experts, if you aren't an expert yourself on something, it's hard to sometimes discern what's right and what's not, right? So the only concern I would have is that all it takes is for her to think there could be one aspect that she feels like needs to be looked into more, for her to say, okay, well, we're going to allow the preliminary injunction to temporarily block the deal, right? And have the FTC and Microsoft work on it further. In that case, like according to Kotick's testimony, Microsoft and ABK would move on from the deal. But that's not necessarily her problem. That's just the way the contract is written and the timetable is presented to her, right? So it really comes down to if she finds anything worthy of allowing the FTC feeling like they're justified in temporarily blocking. And I don't know what she's going to decide. Like I have a good feeling that she probably will go ahead and allow the deal to go through. But if she is questioning anything or feels like there could be a concern somewhere, because the FTC is so damn confusing and they've done maybe that's their whole goal.
I feel like that. Yeah, I feel like that's why they're basically jumping to different points, because they don't really necessarily have a case, so they're gonna be like, well, what about this? What about this? Why did you
Yeah, they're trying to cast doubt. That's their whole point of their whole idea behind their case right now. I feel like is trying to cast doubt to the possibility that there could be something there, and because there is nothing there, so they're trying to. It's like a shadow screen. Like they're trying to make it appear that there's something there by jumping around so much and being so confusing with so many of these gotcha moments that, you know, if they were to get on one of these gotcha moments, right, then be like, oh, the judge has got to take a further look at this, you know. So I I it's just concerning me. Like if this was like an expert that like understood the industry very well or something, I wouldn't be as worried. But like when these cases always decided upon by you know, then it's hard to say what's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's
But
always it's that's a good point because I mean we know the industry pretty well. I mean we have
yeah, we could be expert witnesses, 3-bit.
really good. A lot of the stuff that they were talking about, like the Switch and like does PlayStation do exclusives? Like obviously we know a lot of these questions, but so it's always interesting to hear when like a government body is asking about the Switch and why it's a console, why it's not a console. You know, we obviously know the Switch is a very popular console. It's just another way to access your games. Now, me and you, we're on the same boat where we don't necessarily like the graphical power of the Switch. I think it's kind of trash, but that's another conversation. But it's always interesting to when you hear these conversations of things that we are pretty well educated on. I mean, we do a whole podcast on it almost every week, and then like you were saying, like the judge may or may not be super educated on certain topics, but I think what's a good sign is the fact like a lot of her questions are they're basically clarity kind of questions, like
Right.
like when she was essentially asking about the Switch and basically clarifying if it is a console, or why do you consider it not a console, and you know, basically getting clarity on a lot of these questions. And I think even further today, she was mentioning like Sarah Bond's testimony and saying like, oh, the cloud is only like a smaller percentage of the market, and she basically hinted that to that testimony yesterday. So she's you can tell she's paying attention. She
Yeah.
only
No,
chimes in to get clarity on things.
She's doing a great job. I feel like, you know, it's going to be hard to go against whatever she does decide or be angry at it, because like it's the situation probably in this. I have a good feeling about it, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, she's doing a good job. I think overall, like most of the Microsoft side has done a really good job so far. The FTC witnesses have been kind of slam dunked on, you know, I think.
Yeah.
And but it's clear to us, right? That's clear to us. The question is that clear to the judge, right? So because we're more familiar with the industry, and you know, those failed gotcha attempts that we see, like, is that come through the same, right?
Something that makes me feel crazy sometimes is when you get those like people on Twitter, essentially, like, I guess more Sony-based people saying like, "Wow, the FTC demolished this case." It makes me feel like I'm living in some weird alternate reality, or because I really do try to see things from multiple perspectives. And when you get someone to saying like, "Yeah, the FTC absolutely murdered them," I'm just like, "Were we watching the same case?" Maybe I'm the one that's not fully seeing the case, because I really do try to see things from different perspectives, but it really does feel like the FTC is kind of throwing at the wall, seeing what sticks. And yeah, well, I guess we'll see essentially what happens with this case. I think again, super interesting. Speculation will forever live on in my eyes. I think we should always speculate. It's fun. You know, it's fun to guess what's going to happen. I don't think that should ever be gatekeep. We should continue these conversations, and it's you know, it's fun to see what we're right about, what we're wrong about. There's a lot of I do kind of want to get into that, because there was a couple of different companies they were looking to acquire they even had like statistics on why they should and what are the cons to owning them. So you looked at some of those. What did you find that was like interesting about some of the acquisitions? I guess for some of the companies they were looking to acquire.
Oh man, I mean, there was so many that we've talked about already. I mean, there was like certain affinity, which I've come out and said, like, for me, I feel like Microsoft needs to acquire certain affinity, more so, more or less, because I feel like it would be really damaging for Xbox if certain affinity was acquired by Sony, right? And I think at this point, PlayStation would have an incentive to do so because they're trying to get more into multiplayer and live service type games. And Certain Affinity has a huge background with multiplayer. And the thing is with Microsoft is Certain Affinity is so involved with so many other franchises. We even just heard about them helping early on with Perfect Dark as well.
Yeah.
And then, they're very entrenched with Halo. And if they do acquire ABK, Certain Affinity's worked on Call of Duty before, as well as they've worked on Doom multiplayer as well. So there's so many different IPs that Microsoft has that Certain Affinity is familiar with and has expertise with. And I feel like losing Certain Affinity to Sony, who could make them work on just Bungie stuff and or other live service games like they've announced, you know, would be a bad thing, right? So I think Microsoft needs to find a way to try and acquire them, just to prevent them from being acquired by another company. Um, and So that was on the list, which was interesting. There was also IO Interactive was on the list
That would
as
be
well.
a good one. Yeah.
Right, in which I think it came out from this whole thing that also that Project Dragon is actually a Xbox game, which I think that was a question before. After when Jez Corden originally leaked that Project Dragon,
Yeah.
and then when further after one of the other games that was he had leaked before came out that it was actually going to be like a multi-plat game or whatever. It was unclear about Project Dragon as well, right? But I think today we found that out that it was actually an Xbox exclusive. There was talks with them about acquiring Square Enix, which was very interesting.
That's an interesting one because I'm wondering how. I feel like it'd be good to own a Square Enix, but I'm trying to see like all the benefits of their. I don't know.
Well, they're huge, and I think Hargeet was on one of our podcasts on Xbox Ultimate. We were talking about some stuff.
Yeah.
We were talking about Sega, and he had mentioned, Square, and we're like, why do you think Square? And he had brought up a great point that I wasn't really aware of, that Square has a huge mobile presence in Japan with with mobile games that aren't necessarily popular here. But that plus also, if you think about the benefit for Microsoft on the console side as well, is guess what you're not getting a lot of is the Square Enix games. And if Sony keeps money hatting them, that's going to keep happening, right? So, because what became clear during this trial also is that it cost Microsoft more money to do the same kind of deal that PlayStation does because of the market share, right? So, acquiring Square Enix would completely take care of that situation, right? Where all of you're going to get all the Square Enix games, regardless if they go multi-plat or not. You get them in Game Pass. You get the big games like a Kingdom Hearts or a Final Fantasy, stuff like that. And you also get the whole mobile side in Japan as well. And then you also get the familiarity in Japan of just how popular those games are as well. So that I think Square Enix does make sense. That would be Sony would hate that one though.
Yeah.
If Microsoft acquired Square.
Pissed.
Oh yeah, I think Sony's probably trying to figure that one out themselves right now.
Yeah, and a thing I keep seeing from people who are basically anti this deal is that the fact, like Reforge was bringing up, he came across my timeline. He was essentially saying that it's different because they are buying a whole publisher, and I feel like my counteract to that is they are in a place where they kind of have to buy their own publisher because they they're not only are they in third place, but Sony pretty much is in a market position where they can just make it so they will not go to Microsoft. So with the whole Square Enix situation, like basically Microsoft having to pay 10 times the amount, they could pay like 10 times the amount to have like a Final Fantasy appear on their platform. They are a $1 trillion company, but to me it's not really beneficial to
No, I mean, you're not going to get the returns, right? So
Yeah.
as a business, you would have to be overpaying at that point to try and make up ground,
right.
and with no guarantee on the success of it. And I feel like they've done that at times as well, trying to do what they can, but that's so far their attempts in doing that in the past have not succeeded for them, right? So that's why they're not doing it. Instead, they're doing Game Pass deals, and they're acquiring these companies because when you're doing that, you're investing in your own assets, right? So you're hoping that by spending money on this developer or publisher, that they're going to be worth more in the long run than when you acquired them, like with Minecraft, right? So you're not really just spending money in hopes on a return for one instance. It's more or less, this is growing your ecosystem and you're investing in it, and you're kind of investing in yourself.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And it's like, to me, that's the interesting bit where you as Microsoft have to debate when to overpay for something, otherwise it won't come to your platform. I mean, it was really revealed in this FTC case that if Microsoft didn't pretty much do an 80-20 split, Call of Duty would not be coming to the Xbox, and that's a major game.
Yeah.
So basically, starting to leverage that power where they don't have to make those deals anymore starts with, to me, the Activision deal. It starts with deals like this where people start looking at the Xbox platform as something to actually play on, and not look at it as like, oh yeah, that's the Halo box or the Gears of War box or the Forza box. Xbox has this mentality and something they have to break out of people kind of just doubting them. They're like, oh, that PlayStation is the best, but what does Xbox actually have? I think the showcase was kind of the start for a lot of people in that. I feel like there is a lot of good momentum. We know, I mean, everybody on the Fun Speculation channel knows that there's a lot of games coming up the pipeline. It's almost overwhelming, the amount of games. But a lot of other people who are not really following Xbox, or they don't really know, they're just like kind of dipping their toes in Xbox. They're still skeptical, I would say. Still skeptical of the brand.
Well, it's from most of the market, like for most people, it takes those games actually being out and being successful to draw any kind of hype or excitement. So most people aren't like us, right? Who's going to follow all this stuff, right? So they got to have those successes and not fall on their face like they did with Redfall, to be able to get that confidence out there to where the people are excited for the next big game, from people that aren't used to investing in Xbox games, right? So that's the hard thing. It's like overcoming this identity that you kind of built for yourself in the past, whether it's justified or not. Like, it's a hard thing to overcome, and I call it getting the cool card back. They got to get the cool card back, and when you get labeled or kind of identified as something, it's hard to change that image. So it's possible, and they can do it. It's gonna, and I think it'll happen. I think it's taking a lot longer than I thought.
For sure. I think the fact that people let things on PlayStation slide, even if it's not beneficial to them, like their service or things are more expensive, or you have to pay for MLB The Show as opposed to Game Pass where it's dropping in there. I feel like a lot of PlayStation people let things slide because they know they got that quality game. They know they have expectations of certain games coming to the platform, and we know Xbox has a horde of talent over with their 20-something studios, but those games have to release. They have to come out, and when they do come out, people are. I generally feel like when you start seeing Starfield, when you start seeing Fable, when these games actually come out, it's gonna be hard to ignore.
Yeah, and Starfield's is gonna be that game that's gonna start this cycle, I think, for them.
Yeah. So, speaking of Starfield, what are you doing? Are you jumping on PC or console for that?
I gotta try. I'm trying to save up, get a PC.
Okay.
We'll see if I can make it happen or not. Apparently, according to testimony from Dr. Lee, it's gonna cost me exactly $1,500 to get a PC. So I gotta save up $1,500 to get a PC to substitute my console gaming habit with Starfield. That's apparently, every PC costs $1,500.
Yeah.
Apparently
I've always been like, oh man, like with Redfall, I still haven't played Redfall on consoles because I'm not playing at 30 frames. I feel like me and you are kind of in a similar boat with what we accept out of certain games.
Yeah.
I can't. It's hard for me to go back to 30 frame games.
It's hard, man. Like Starfield, I'm gonna make an exception regardless if I can't get the PC. It is what it is, right? Like I'll play it because it's just too damn an important game for me, and I think it was a mistake for them. I think Todd's being stubborn a little bit, but it is what it is. I think it would be possible if they really wanted to make it possible, but he doesn't see it as a priority at all. So that's just a situation, right? So eventually maybe there can be a mod or an update, but I'll play it regardless on Xbox if it and I'll play it even if I get the PC. Like I will be playing some on Xbox because I'm not always going to be playing it sitting here next to the PC, right? So I want to get a PC pretty much just for that game, but it is getting frustrating seeing so many other games come out at 30 as well, and poor performance. It's kind of it's kind of sucks, man. And I'll make an exception for Starfield, but an example of a game I was actually really excited for that I'm having a hard time with right now and not getting is Final Fantasy 16, right? Because it's quality mode is 30 frames, whatever it is. Performance mode is
burning people's PS5s
around 40, and they make some really drastic trade-offs with the resolution and graphics even for that, and it's not even hitting anywhere close to unless you're out in a battle, which is interesting. And that just seems like a very inconsistent experience for me. Like jumping from around 40 frames per second in the open world to 60 in combat, as much transitions as there probably are for that, it just seems like a shitty, horrible experience for me. I don't want to do. So in that case, I got to play it at locked 30.
Which is what John Linneman was saying. He's like, it's better just have a locked.
Yeah, but you see a game like that, it's like there's no reason for that game. You know what I mean? It's pretty. It's got this open world to it and stuff, but it's a single player game, and it's kind of linear with the way the story is and stuff like that as well. It just doesn't make any damn sense. And again, this goes to priorities for the developers and what they went for, which I keep not understanding. I guess that you're a developer, so maybe you can answer this for me. Why the hell don't they prioritize frame rate more in the development cycle and constantly focus on fidelity with these games, man? for me, like people do say, "Oh, we haven't seen anything crazy like next gen, mind blowing yet," right? And I get that, but like fidelity wise, I've been pretty okay with where we've been at in the Xbox One and PS4 era. Like we had games like Red Dead Redemption 2 come out, and like
It's gorgeous.
even before that, gorgeous games like even the Arkham series, and I think a lot of times like it's more about just the talent of the dev and making a lot of these games look good, and they've proven they can make gorgeous looking games last generation. So like it's just these extra little bells and whistles. It's like every time that something's new available to them, they want to push for it at the expense of the frame rate, which makes a much bigger impact for me than like shadows, right?
A reflection.
Like yeah, like oh wow, I get to was standing still, I get to look at this amazing looking shadow, but you know I'm doing it moving at 30 frames per second, and the whole game is worse because of it, right? So I just don't understand the priorities with game development and pushing so much with fidelity at times at the expense of frame rate, and especially resolution. A lot of them make it where it's only 4K.
Yeah.
You know, it's I don't know. I just I got issues like Jedi Survivor, same thing. You know, performance mode is all over the damn place.
The
Even the
VRR does
quality,
help though. Like I was playing it and I was like, oh, you know,
it's
it
it's
does
better in
good.
performance mode than it is in quality mode. But even then, the quality mode and the performance mode both sacrifice on resolution and quality with a lot of the visuals and stuff because of their forced ray tracing and stuff they put in.
Yeah.
Which to me, it's like playing the game. It's like I'm not thinking, wow, look at this ray tracing. Like I haven't experienced any moments like that at all. And at times, I think Jedi Fallen Order looks better. You know, like
Yeah,
I just don't understand, especially Jedi Fallen Order with the performance update when running at 60 frames. I would much rather do that. You know, I don't know. I don't. You got to talk to your buddies there, man. You got to get in their ears when they're in the ground floor of making these damn games. Say,
Yeah.
hey, you know,
I
let's
just
start
think
it. Make
lot
sure
of-
it's 60 frames and go from.
a lot of devs. I think Square Enix. I mean, I had a thought that they just didn't prioritize 60 frames, and then they thought they could do it later in development, which is pretty much what some of the people on DigiFoundry were saying. They're saying like, yeah, Square Enix probably prioritize it later, and I'm always the camp. If you want 60 frames, you should probably do it in the beginning of development.
Shit, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy was.
That game was pretty smooth, right? I think
Yeah,
it's been a while since I played it.
and a very good looking game as well, and a very good quality game.
Was that UE? Unreal Engine?
That I don't know what engine it was, but it was Eidos Montreal that made it, right? So I mean, which they don't own anymore. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it shows. I think it's a lot of it's down to the developers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's whatever the developer wants to do, and unfortunately, a lot of developers are prioritizing that 30 frames, and this is something I mentioned a long time ago. My biggest worry with this generation is that we're constantly like moving, as to say, this bubble. Like we finally got new tech, we got more powerful hardware. But instead of optimizing the hardware like the devs had to do for the Xbox One or PS4, they're like, oh, we got plenty of space now. Let's not optimize it like we used to. And then we're back to 30 frames. That was something I was very worried about, that devs would say, oh, look at all this new power we have. Now that we have the power, we don't have to optimize as much. And then what happens when you make decisions like that is we're back to 30 frames, which it's like it's not really differentiating the past generation at that point. You're pretty much just getting like, you might get like sharper textures, etc. The thing that makes this generation so different from the last one is the fact that we are getting more 60 frame games, and I do hope more devs focus on just giving you an option. You know, let's say like even Jedi, you know, with all its faults aside, at least it gave you an option of that 60 frames. I would say I would prefer 60 over everything. Like, just having that as a base experience and then working from there rather than what you're saying, like the ray tracing and everything. Like, you can't really completely tell the difference with a lot of these ray traced games. Like Halo Infinite is on the screen right now. They just added a ray tracing mode for this game, and then it makes some of the shadows a little bit more accurate. But if you're just you see how chaotic this game is, you're not going to be standing there and looking at the vents shadows and you're like, hey, that vent shadow is not accurate, you know. So I completely understand what you're saying about the ray trace. I still am a tech person. I do think that it can get to a place where it is visually impressive, but if you don't like do it built in from the beginning, like where you're trying to make it impressive and you do it as more of an afterthought, then it's not going to be impressive. You're just going to have kind of what Hellblade did. Like, you might be some better reflections, you might get some nice rim lighting on the character, etc., but it shouldn't be enough to impact the whole performance of a game. Like, it shouldn't be at a, I don't know, like where it impacts the game to the point where you're getting like 20 frames per second, you know. I'm definitely in the camp of what you're saying. Performance over everything. I do wish Starfield did give you an option. That is something I asked. The kind of funny, they were basically sent out a survey and what questions you wanted to ask Todd. My question, which may have come across a little harsh, but what I essentially said was, hey, if this is your creative vision to have 30 frames essentially, then make 30 frames on PC as well. But I do know it's a little bit harder to do that for PC. I understand the different arguments are surrounding that, but I just don't think it's I don't know, it's such a weird thing to say it's your creative vision to have a game at 30 frames per second. Like, there's so many other things you could have said, but he said it was his creative vision. So I don't know. What do you think about that? The whole where Todd was essentially saying it was his creative vision to have the game at 30.
Well, he's talked the technical aspects about they need the overhead and stuff like that because of all the objects in the world that you want to interact with, and I don't never want them to change like the core gameplay design for like frame rate, right? But like, I feel like when he was talking, he also mentioned that playing the game several times, they're over 60 frames, and but they need the overhead, so they locked it at 30. But then when I look back at it, okay, well, you're also at 4K and you're locking it at 30, and you said that you were hitting over 60 at times. So I think the main thing is just providing options. And I understand the creative control of wanting to have the best experience possible for people to have. This is the way you want them to experience the game, right? Because this is your vision. But sometimes I feel like that your vision may not align with what some customers want or have expectations for these days, especially when we've gotten so accustomed to 60 frames on consoles now the last 3 years. The fact that PC gamers get these options, right? Even on the lower end models or mid-spec PCs, you can still toggle all these different features and do all these different things, right? And maybe a mid-spec PC can only do 30 frames, 1440 or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But a 3-year-old Xbox Series X console is probably closer to like a mid-spec PC these days, right? So the fact that PC players get the option and can tweak the experience how they want. Now, console players, like, we got to understand, we're not going to get all of that, sure. But most games these days come with 2 options, maybe sometimes 3, and some games go crazy and give you like 5, right? With different modes. So it would be nice for them to implement at least one other option. And if you can't hit a smooth 60, if you can't hit a target that you think is going to have a locked frame rate, or if you can't get it to where you want, you can still offer a low resolution mode like a 1080 mode or a 1440 mode, maybe with some kind of upscaling as well, and then unlock the frame rate and take advantage of like VRR or something like that. Kind of like, even though I criticized Jedi Survivor and Final Fantasy, right? At least they took the extra effort to put those options in, because in Jedi Survivors, even though that performance mode is not great, it has its issues. I still rather play Jedi Survivor in that mode than the quality mode, right?
Yeah.
So and that's after experiencing both modes. So I feel like if they had the option, it would be nice, even if with needing that headroom. I think you just have that expectation that, hey, if I am the crazy person that's going to go get a million sandwiches and put it on a table, it's probably going to make my frame rate dip a little bit. You know what I mean? But the fact that they didn't even give us the option, that just makes me a little bit disappointed. And if this keeps happening this way and we don't get new hardware console-wise to take care of the issues, then that's kind of making me think more about the PC side, because I'm sick of getting treated like a second-class citizen because of.
Yeah, that's something I've been feeling as well. It's so weird because in terms of the specs of this console, it's close to a 2080, and then if you look at the Starfield specs, it's like the recommended and then minimum whatever is basically akin. Like the 2080 should make this game be 60 theoretically, but I don't know. Maybe they just need more time, or maybe based on how Todd is kind of stating things, maybe he just really didn't want people to play this game at 60, or they didn't want little trees dropping out.
It's because of the the way the game is designed, with all of the interactivity with all the items and stuff all around the world, right? So and I get that, like, but you can still, for me, I would think, if you put in the effort, have the second mode in there, that even if it's not ideal, even if it's not the best case scenario, right? Having a second mode in there, like some of these other Deads do, for the people that like a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm always gonna be Team 60. But I do agree. I mean, this game is impressive, in terms of what it's trying to do. I completely praise the Bethesda team for pushing a game like this out there. I mean, I just want my 60. I completely agree. Something we have to give people or developers credit for is just trying something ambitious and trying something new, because we do see clones of the same game, and like hundreds of games that are super similar. Maybe they'll have a little bit something different, or but this is we don't get this game often. So that's why
for sure. That's why I said, when I said I don't want them to scale back on ambition of like the game design for it. You know what I mean? If it's really a handicap, it can only do this amount of frames because of this. There's no way around that, and it's understandable. And I don't want to sacrifice on that. I just find it hard. Not a second option to put in there.
I think it's freaking possible. That's what's weird to me. Just based on what we know about the Series X, and I don't know. I'm tired.
We'll find out for sure when we see people that have PC options or what they're able to get out of it.
Yeah, right? How well the game is optimized and everything. We'll know that soon, as the game's coming up. Not that.
Yeah, if on a 2080, 2070 or whatever, you're only able to get 30 frames at 1080, then then okay, well that's what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. All right, well, we're gonna actually end here. I didn't want to keep you. We did start the show late, but I do appreciate you dropping onto the show. I don't know if this will be a regular thing or not. This podcast, if not, ASK3BIT will be more of the regular thing. But I did want to put this podcast back up for this show in particular. But Mav, appreciate you for dropping by. One of my good friends on here. Tell us where we can find you, and yeah, tell us where we can locate your show.
Fun speculation. YouTube. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. Go there.
Go there. Go see our awesome shows.
Yeah. Hey, this is cool. 3-bit. You should do this more often, man. Bring back VGHD for good.
Yeah, I think I should, man. I've been like itching to start making videos and streams again. It's just like work has been feeling like work. So
Should get a couple of your game
creating.
dev buddies and like talk about game dev stuff.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. Maybe I get Insane Cakes on here. For those who don't know, Insane Cakes, he's an animator, a friend I met in college. He works at Bethesda. He does some of the emotes for Elder Scrolls Online and stuff. He's a good friend of mine. Might have him on maybe next week or something. Could talk some game dev stuff. So I can't often I can't really talk about a lot of game dev stuff. I could like sort of dance around it in some topics, but can't always talk about it. It's a good point. But yeah, appreciate you for dropping on by. Poison Maniac, Timmy, Kato, everyone who basically jumped in. I know it was late and everything. So we'll be over more in time next time. I just wanted to set this stream up, and it was very late. But no, I appreciate everyone for dropping by and Matt for coming. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for watching.
Oh, and hey, one more thing, 3-bit.
Yeah.
For the audience, everybody out there listening, make sure you don't dip your cheese in Miracle Whip.
That was on our Diablo stuff, I think.
Yeah, that's shout out to Pong Soul.
Yeah, shout out to Pong. All right,
Gross.